I'm going to get things started. So have a great conversation, everybody.
Hi, I want to take a moment to get you used to the Zoom webinar audience participation features so that you can interact with us. This is what your Zoom viewer window will look like. All of the tools that you'll need to interact with us are at the top or bottom of your viewer window. Find where they are for your version and follow along. First, as always, we want to encourage you to ask questions. You can submit questions during any point in the webinar. To ask a question of the webinar panelists, simply hover over your viewer window until the user controls come into view. Click on the Q&A button. When you do, the Q&A box will open up. Simply type in your question here. Then, click Send to submit your question. Send in your questions at any time. As questions come in, we'll flag the ones that are most relevant for the entire audience. You may get a message from Zoom indicating that we plan to respond to your question. We can't guarantee that we'll respond to all questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can during our Q&A session. Once the session is over, we'll review all the questions and follow up later. Next, I want to tell you about the chat feature so you can join the conversation. Use chat to make comments or respond to questions that we may ask you, the audience. To use the chat feature, hover over the viewer window until the user controls come into view. Click on the chat button. When you do, the chat box will open up. Simply type in your comment here. Then, press Enter to submit your response. Remember, chat is used to make comments or respond to questions we may pose to you. Use the Q&A function to ask your questions of us. Finally, we want to tell you about the Raise Hand tool. Raise your hand to respond to a quick poll. For example, we may ask, how many of you have seen your county snapshot? If you have, simply raise your hand by clicking on the Raise Hand button. Don't worry about lowering your hand. We'll take care of that for you. Here's a quick summary of how you can participate in today's webinar. Use the Q&A feature to ask a question of the panelists. Use chat to make a comment or respond to a question we ask the audience. Raise your hand as appropriate when we poll the audience. We'll help you get used to these new features throughout the webinar. Thanks for watching. Now just sit back and relax. The webinar will begin shortly.
Hello, and welcome to Empowering Young People to Create Change. And James, I am gonna have to get you to give me permission to share.
Okay, that should do it.
Great, yeah. So there you go, and you all probably see our cover slide. So yeah, welcome to our webinar, welcome to Empowering Young People to Create Change. We are County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, and we're a program at the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. This webinar is co-produced with Healthy Places by Design, and it is the result of the contributions of many colleagues and partners in Wisconsin and across the nation, including the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And I also want to acknowledge that the views of the speakers outside of CHRNR are their own. So hello, and my name is Erica Burrows-Girardi, and I want to introduce you to a couple of colleagues that will be joining us in facilitating your learning today. I'm going to start with introducing you to Joanne Lee. Hi, Joanne.
Erica, hi everyone in the audience. So glad to be here. Joanne Lee with Healthy Places by Design. And my role today during this live webinar will be to monitor the Q&A box. So go ahead and find the Q&A box on your menu and click it open. And you don't have to wait. As questions come up as you're listening to our wonderful presenters, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box. Now, we can't promise we'll get to every question, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. I'll also be answering some live if I can. And we will carry some of the questions over to the post-webinar discussion group, which Erica will tell you a little bit more about in a minute. But first, I want to introduce you all to Tommy Jaime. He is a colleague with CHRNR. Hi, Tommy.
Thanks, Joanne. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you all. And like Joanne said, I'll be chatting with you in the chat box today. And just remember that when chatting, please be sure to use the drop-down box and choose chat to everyone before sending your message. That way, everyone can see your chat. And if you have a question, please be sure to place that in the Q&A box where Joanne will meet you, like she mentioned. And next up, I'd like to introduce James Lloyd. James is a colleague here at County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, and he'll be helping with technology today. If you have any tech issues during the webinar, please let us know in the chat. Hi, James.
Hi, Tommy. Thanks so much. And as Tommy said, I'm the technologist. I work with CHRNR. And if you have any technical issues with Zoom, feel free to message the panelists in chat, and I'll pick up from there. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to this topic. And I'll hand it back to you, Erica.
Thank you. Thanks so much to my colleagues who are truly so helpful with our monthly webinars. And some of you might even be new to County Health Rankings and Roadmaps. If you are new to the County Health Rankings and Roadmaps family, let us know. Go ahead and send a chat to us and let us know who you are and where you hail from. And welcome to our family. But if you are new, I do want to take a moment to share what it is that is important to us. So CHRNR is committed to growing community power to improve community health. And we do this in a number of ways. First, we start with data to identify who isn't thriving. And we encourage you to look at the data for your county and start there. Then we point you to evidence to share what research is showing is working. We also share guidance to help you take steps to action, like actually creating change. And then lastly, we offer stories to give you real life examples of what community change looks like. CHRNR is comprehensive in that our goal is to provide you with tools and resources to move you from data to action so that in the end, everyone in your community has the opportunity to thrive, no matter what their zip code is, the color of their skin, their age, or any other aspect that makes us unique. We have what we call a CHRNR 101 webinar that you can watch on demand to learn more about us. And Tommy's going to chat out the link for that. So take a look at it if you need to learn more about us. But in the meantime, let me give you a nice, warm, hearty welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about youth leadership. Youth leadership programs provide opportunities for youth to gain skills and understand their strengths and growth areas while working as active agents of change. Youth leadership programs can take various forms, such as advocacy groups, peer education, service learning, youth-led participatory research, and local government youth advisory councils and boards. These are just some of the benefits you see listed here that youth experience when given the opportunity to lead. The bottom line is, when we invest in our youth, we're investing in our community's future. But even though we know this to be true, if we're honest, several of us as adult professionals, myself included, struggle to connect and engage with youth. So that's why I'm excited to introduce you to our guests, because we're going to be exploring some questions about how adult professionals can be more connected. First, I want you to meet Cheryl Green. Cheryl is the Associate Director of Aspen Young Leaders Fellowship, which you will hear us refer to as AYLF. So, hi Cheryl, how are you?
Good afternoon, Erica. Doing well. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And now I'm going to introduce you to two dynamic youth leaders who are going to be sharing their experiences in youth leadership. First, meet Kevin Martin. Kevin is a 22-year-old educator at Kip Delta Middle School in Helena, West Helena, Arkansas. And get this, Kevin also co-founded the Racial Equity Task Force that's in operation there. And after hearing Kevin's story, you will be inspired by what can happen when you foster youth leadership. So, hi, Kevin, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, Erica, thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. And Kevin did actually have to get a substitute teacher to be able to join us. So thank you so much for that. And yeah. And next I want to introduce you to Celine Bernhardt Lanier. Celine is a high school senior living in Barcelona, Spain, where it's just after 9 o'clock there, but 9 o'clock p.m. that is. But she's also the CEO of Log Off, which is an international movement dedicated to rethinking social media by teens for teens. After hearing Celine's story, you will appreciate what happens when you create space for youth to engage with other youth in social change. So, hi, Celine, and thank you for joining us after school today because it's 9 o'clock where you are.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you. And so, I have to tell you all, as I was working on the production of this webinar, all I could think about was, what was I doing when I was a high school senior? And what was I doing when I was 22 years old? And it definitely wasn't reshaping my community as Kevin and Celine are. So this is a real treat to be able to engage with younger people and just hear from them about what their experiences are in changing the world. Now, all three of our guests will be sharing tips to help you and I, again, as adult professionals, cultivate youth leadership. So I hope that you will find this exciting. And what I want to ask you to do is help us spread the word about this webinar right now. So I'm going to ask you to go to Twitter. If you are a Twitter user, I'm actually getting my phone out and I'm doing it too. So I want to ask you to just take a moment to go to CH Rankings and let's retweet what was just posted there. Because I want us to be able to share with folks what is going on with this webinar. So take a moment to do that. Now, we have an exciting opportunity for you to process what you're going to be learning today. We're going to hold an interactive discussion group to deepen your learning after today's webinar. These conversations give you a chance to be face-to-face with other webinar attendees and share what you're doing locally, as well as ask questions of other participants. We're pleased to be able to offer these sessions in partnership with Healthy Places by Design. Joanne will be our lead facilitator, and our guests will join us in that discussion. Tommy's going to chat out a link for the discussion group later in the webinar, so be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, if you want links to the slides, Tommy can chat that out as well, and he will also chat out a link to the guest bio sketches. He's probably Tommy, I'm sure you're way ahead of me on that, but just letting you know to look out for that. And now I want to re-invite Cheryl back to the mic. Cheryl, let's get this conversation started. I want to start by asking, what is the mission of, again, Aspen Youth Leaders Fellowship? Again, that's AYLF. And what makes this fellowship unique?
Yes, thanks again, Erica. So there's the stated mission that we have on the slide here that says that AYLF is really gauged and targeted towards identifying, cultivating, and amplifying future generations of talent. But then there's a narrative that sort of exists outside the mission. We are a program that focuses on specific populations. Those populations are Black and Brown youth in regions of the country that have the largest gaps between talent and opportunity. And we've determined that from data that's provided in the Distressed Cities Index and the Index of Deep Disadvantaged Study. So right now we operate in 3 regions. We are in St. Louis, we're in the Arkansas, Mississippi Delta, we're in Chicago, we were in Newark, we've moved out of there. And in the next 2 years, we'll be in Miami, and we'll also be in potentially New Orleans. Our program is rooted in elements that really focus on the individual needs of fellows and the collective needs. But we also know that before we start working with their families, their communities, there are people and organizations that are rooted in their neighborhoods that have already made contributions. We want to pull them in as well, try to engage them as much as possible, because we know that nurturing those local partnerships are essential to the success of our program. So we pull them in, families, community agents, school, churches, with the idea that in about 5 to 7 years, hopefully, these communities will execute aylf, and Aspen acts as a resource agent, providing back office and program supports.
I love that, Cheryl. It truly is a systems approach that operates in the community level, right? I
Absolutely.
love that. So, how do you specifically invest in youth?
Yeah, so we usually have about 24 to 30 youth per region, ages 18 to 22. They're selected via an application and interview process. For the most part, we really are looking for youth who are engaged in some type of way or have identified something they're passionate about in their communities. And that's pretty much our line for selection. Once they come into the fellowship, they're with us for 1 year in a cohort experience. They're in monthly seminars that are led by a local delivery team of people from the community. They participate in field experiences. They pretty much ended with a community impact project. What we also sort of have learned is it's one thing to have 1 year with them, to give them more experiences, to help deepen their tool belt and things of that nature. But then dropping them back in the same communities sometimes was a bit difficult. So we have decided to walk alongside them in a phase 2 part of the program for the next 2 to 5 years. That helps us be able to leverage our social capital to connect them with internships, do networking. We also do things like provide tutoring services for those that are in college, help them write their letters for grad school applications. And in some instances, when families have had difficulties and challenges that may create barriers for the fellows, we step in when, of course, we are allowed to, and have done things like help get families settled in a variety of ways. And we've seen that more and more since the pandemic.
I bet.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you realize that the youth that you are indeed serving is part of a broader network. I mean, they're part of and you need that whole support in order to be effective. So I'm glad that you all are recognizing that. So share a little bit about how are you working with youth?
Yeah, Erica, we really a lot of times have to sit ourselves down and understand that as adults, we can actually do more to harm our relationships with youth in ways that can come across as demeaning and disrespectful and damaging. And again, believing that we are doing good works on behalf of young people. And so we try to act from a certain set of guiding principles when working with young adults. One, we sort of lean in on Haberman's work, The Pedagogy of Poverty, when he provided help and support to practitioners in urban school settings and pretty much said, you have to like the children that you work with.
Yeah.
So we apply that to this situation as well. We genuinely like and love the young, I hate to say young people, we genuinely like and love the younger adults that we work with, and that shows. The other thing that we do when we engage and interact is make sure that we come from a place of curiosity and discovery, not from a place of knowing. We are always hoping to have each and every engagement feel as if we are learning something new. So we ask questions, we're interested in their worlds and the things that are relevant to them. And then, we follow the quote by Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot, which is listen to the silence and hear what it has to say. And it's pretty potent when working not only with young adults, just with people in general. We let the silence sit and stand, let the pauses be there, and then step in when asked, but try not to step in with counsel and advice. This is a two-way relationship. We want to learn from them as much as they learn from us. And so we are equally learners and teachers in our shared experiences. And then finally, one of the things that probably personally for me is the hardest to do is we really want to make sure when they bring things to us, we treat every issue and challenge as legitimate. If it's legitimate to them, it's legitimate to us. And so to sort of step away from things that we may think are juvenile or silly because we're beyond that, but to truly see it from their perspective as something that is serious, a serious part of their lives, and treating it as serious.
Yeah, it makes me think about, I love how you said we should be curious, because a lot of times the things that they're saying that might seem juvenile or silly to us is really their curiosity coming out. So like you said, it's that two-way street. So we should be curious, but also respect their curiosity and the fact that it may come out in a way that we're like, what? You know. So anyway, good advice for helping me manage my 25-year-old, because I'm still curious about what he does and what he says. So now I know there are communities that are on today's webinar that are also looking to invest in youth. Tell us, what are 3 key elements to cultivating youth leadership?
Yeah, we've learned some important things about this. The first thing we've learned is that our youth come to us already chock full of great experiences. They are brilliant. They already have great ideals, extremely talented, as we'll see with both Kevin and Celine later in this conversation. And so what we know in some of these communities is that even as talented as they often aren't connected to opportunities that match that talent. We are a large international organization, and so we make sure that we are trying to connect them as much as possible to actual opportunities that match the things that they want to do, if they're able to do that. And so this allows us to help nurture them. This also allows us to continue to allow them to learn and sort of figure out what it is that they want to do, who it is that they would like to be, and how they want to show up, but in a space where they're getting actual experiences.
Right.
The second thing we've learned too is that a lot of them come to us with particular issues. Like I said earlier, that's part of our selection criteria. So we've had fellows come in who've been interested about homelessness, mental health, reproductive health, body positivity, hunger, social justice, among a lot of other things. And the challenge is that a lot of times they aren't able to really articulate how those passions connect to their reasons for being. And so we sort of help them activate their concerns by taking them on a journey to self and community and how to connect all those things to things that you really want to do and that you are concerned about. And so we help them be able to see how you can really find something that you want to do or something that you love or an issue you want to solve, and then
Right.
move that into, part of your whole self. And then the last thing is sort of connected to the passion and purpose thing, right? Is more so around vision and how they can move into action. So we have Kevin here today. He's actually started and has done a lot of work in his community with some things that he envisioned around race. We have people like Tyler and Yasmin in Mississippi that planned and led a whole community racial justice march. Kendall is in Chicago. She has an organization now called Pretty Period that works on body positivity. A fellow named Stantasia has been hosting and running an annual community dinner for a while now and has expanded that across our community. And so how we step in there is to provide resources for them. And that can be helping them think through things all the way to financial resources based upon what their needs are.
Wow, that is amazing. And we are so fortunate to actually have Kevin. He's going to be sharing a little bit of his experience. But thank you so much, Cheryl, for just giving us a brief glimpse of how AYLF is really investing in youth. And I know that there is a link to this program where you all can learn more about it. It will be included on your resource guide. And that resource guide will be emailed to you tomorrow, so you can really get in there and explore what Aspen is doing to really just step in and to provide some guidance to you to help develop their purpose. I just love that. So with that, I want to ask Kevin to come back to the mic. And Cheryl, I know you're sticking around. Cheryl's actually going to be in the discussion group too. So make sure you come so you can learn more about the fellowship there as well. Kevin, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I'm looking at a map that shows where your town is, Helena, West Helena, Arkansas. And if could you just, in order for us to get a better picture of what your town is like, can you tell us 3 things you would want us to know about Helena, West Helena?
Yeah, you pointed out one, just looking at the map, it's literally as far east as you can travel in Arkansas. We're like walking distance from Mississippi. We're about an hour's drive away from Memphis. And so, yeah, it's a lot of that mixture of like culture and such like that. So like we always arguing with Mississippi about who actually founded the blues and stuff like that. The blues is a huge part of our history and stuff like that. But also, if you think about like the fact that it's so close to Mississippi and Tennessee, you can also think about like that racial history in those states and how that also plays in with Arkansas and just being in that region. And so, yeah, Helena is also really segregated. Helena is on paper about 70% Black, but there are about just as many Black people in the city as there are white people living on the outskirts. And so it's almost I would say it's almost 50-50 in the area in terms of white and Black. And then, yeah, there's like maybe 1% of like some up and coming like minorities because, yeah, there has been like an increase in like Latinx community. But if you take that and you think about the fact though that like in the city of Helena, we have 2 public schools. Both of those are 100% African American. And then you look on the cities in the outskirts, and those are about 100% white. And then thinking about stuff like that in 2021, it just really
So
makes you.
geographically, you are segregated. What about the political leadership? Because from what I understand, the leadership there is predominantly white, but residents are Black.
Exactly, yeah. And so
Okay.
even though we're like 70% Black, we have like predominantly white leadership. And so most of the
Okay.
people in office making those decisions are white. And so, yeah, you can imagine how that power dynamic just also influences like the social dynamics. And like Cheryl said earlier, when you think about those distressed areas, Helena is one of the ones that always pops up, which brings me to the third point. Whereas, like, as somebody who's from this area, I always tell people that we're top 5. Like, to me, we're like top 5 places in Arkansas. But if you look it up, Helena is always within like the top 5 like worst places to be in Arkansas. And so, yeah, that's like, yeah. And so that could definitely probably give you a picture of like what Helena is working with.
So you definitely, I should point out, you not only teach in this area, but you grew up in this area. So you grew up in a town that obviously has some challenges, but after hearing your story, I discovered that you are a natural born leader. And I want you to share an example of a systems effort change that you led as a student there at the school, in the school district you now teach in.
Yeah. So one that always comes to mind with me would be as a sophomore over the summer, I got the opportunity to go to Brown University and participate in a summer at Brown. It was a conflict leadership. It was a conflict resolution camp that was about 3 weeks. And they really just gave us a lot of that. Gave me a
Like
lot of
tools, like the tools, right?
those tools that I was able to bring back because I like you said, I teach in my area. I also went here. I teach at a KIPP, and if anybody knows anything about KIPP schools, they're charter schools that basically, they're public charter schools that go into disenfranchised areas and they push the whole like to and through college. But to be completely honest, they do it in a really white way. Growing up, I had predominantly white teachers, and so there was a big cultural disconnect between the staff and the students, and that always led to inequitable behavior, like behavioral referrals and things like that. And so I remember like being a ninth grader on the basketball team and having like some of the older basketball girls cheering in the crowd while we were playing, like things that like we were normally used to at sports events, like saying things like miss it while the other team was at the free throw line. And I remember our principal coming in, removing them from the game, canceling their game, saying that they were just like being completely disrespectful. And we were just like, are you serious? And so, yeah. And then, so using those tools that I got from Summer at Brown, we ended up being able to have those conversations with leadership at the school and let them know like, hey, I feel like we should just work together and try to see if there's any way that we could like help y'all handle the discipline, because I think that you guys are getting wrong interpretations of our behavior based on the fact that we just come from different areas.
I love that.
Yeah, and they helped us kind of put together a disciplinary board between like the students and teachers. And so that was pretty cool.
I love that. I love the fact that you said, let's talk about this and let's work this out. And those are the kind of tools that are going to help you further in life. I'm sure you already figured that out. You're a teacher, so I know you deal with conflict. But what did you learn about the support that you needed to lead that effort? Like actually working with the teachers and say, hey, we need to change how we do things. So what did you learn about support that you need to actually lead?
I learned that it really takes people doing what they're not supposed to do. It took a lot of rule-breaking teachers in order for me to get to where I am today, I say. I had a lot of teachers who took me under their wing and were way honest with me than the system probably wanted them to be. I had teachers who literally, my 10th grade year before that summer, who pulled me to the side and said, hey, Kevin, you got to do something for the summer. Like, you can't stay around here playing basketball, walking the streets. Like, you have to do something for the summer. Here's some summer opportunities. Actually, I already picked you one out. Let's work on this one. And so they actually told me like, hey, you should go for this, because we see you. We know that you're a leader. We know that you're someone who could definitely make this school a better place. And so I definitely went into that with that support of those teachers who were able to like pull me to their house after school so that I can get help from the who were like also English teachers at the school, who had me rewriting my essay 3 to 4 times, making sure that it was acceptable for that program. And so like, if it was not for them, I don't know where I would be. And so it definitely took those rule-breaking teachers who did what needed to be
really
done.
willing to pour into you and make sure that you had the support you needed to move forward. So I love that. I'm getting ready to share a beautiful collage that you created, Kevin. And I want to remind the audience that you're also an alumna of the AYLF, the Aspen Young Leaders Fellowship. How did AYLF programs sharpen your leadership skills?
AYLF did they poured into me a lot. Like, AYLF is, I would give them a lot of credit with my leadership capabilities now. Like before I joined the Aspen Fellowship in 2019, I was a senior in college. And at that point, I would have thought leadership honestly looked like that one person that was just over everybody, whether it be the president or the mayor or whatever that looked like in that hierarchy of power in whatever system.
Right.
But like, because of them, I was able to get such a diverse lens of leadership, and just was able to see that like, you could be a barber, you could be a doctor, you could literally be like whatever in the community, as long as you're in a position to have those powerful conversations with people.
Yeah.
And like, having those power conversations with people can literally be the change that you need to see in your community. And so I definitely, like, with that was one of the things that definitely empowered me being a teacher coming back here. I was using like some of the things I learned at Aspen, like with my students, like we're having text-based dialogue about like how this relates to our life and what we know and all of that. And so definitely giving me that diverse lens of like leadership. I know I'm a leader in whatever system I step in.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes,
That is wonderful.
two, as you can see in my collage, like I've met so many cool people. Like, my network has grown expansively. During the fellowship, a lot of us would joke about the fact that like, Yeah, we think Aspen thinks like Clarksdale, which is in Mississippi, is like across the bridge from like Helena. Yeah, because Helena's Arkansas. Also, sorry. And so yeah, and so we would always joke like, yeah, they gotta think that we're like closer than we are because they just like put us in Clarksdale. Like they didn't like put us in like Arkansas and in Clarksdale. They just put us both over there. But it was honestly like so crazy not even knowing that there were so many young leaders my age. Like you look at leadership and you think that like, yeah, you got to have like this older leader who takes you under their wing and they help develop you. But it was like actually being in a space with other like-minded young people who you are also learning from. It was just like, it was incredible. It was, yeah.
It's like they created space for you to really learn from each other and network with each other, which is amazing. You know, one of the things I asked you to do was to give adult professionals some tips on how we can engage youth. I mean, you're 22 years old. You have already co-founded a racial equity task force. If we want to engage youth leaders in advancing equity, I asked you to give us a list of some things that need to be done. And here's a list. I mean, it's like really good tips. I want you to pick like maybe one or two that really stand out that we need to like drum into our heads that that's a tip we definitely need to use if we want to engage in youth. What would you say are one or two?
Honestly, echoing what you and Cheryl already talked about, like listening to you would be so like it's essential. You have to listen. You talked about like I'm part of the co-founding of my city's racial equity task force. That was because me and the two other people who helped put together a rally in my community wrote that letter to the mayor saying like, hey, some stuff is going on and we got to talk. And then it was that him listening to us and offering us his ear and like giving us a space, which is my second one, is definitely that creating that space. You have to create that space, which kind of includes involving them, ensuring to accommodate their availability, especially creating that space and allowing them to like brainstorm, like literally just go in there and go like, hey, so what do y'all think we can do? And then just bouncing those ideas off each other with like as little input as possible from people who were not invited to that party. Like, I'm sorry. But like not to limit them because again, like Cheryl said, like there'll be those times where like we might have those questions and it's great to have you there. But until then, like just let them have that space to literally just bounce those ideas off of those like-minded individuals that they never have that ability to do, honestly. And so, yeah, it would be listening to you and making sure that we're creating those spaces.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You know, I am so impressed by like what you are doing and I don't want to say at your young age, but let's just say at your tender age. No, seriously, at 22, you know, forming a task force in my city was like far from my mind. So thank you for just sharing your wisdom with us. I know you're going to join us in the discussion group as well. And I see one of your tips on here is using social media. And so we're going to talk to Celine next because Celine Bernhardt-Lanier is going to share how her organization, Log Off, capitalizes on this benefit of social media, but at the same time ensures that you do not experience the adverse effects of social media use. And she's going to explain that as well as how her organization provides opportunities for youth to lead in that effort. So welcome back, Celine, and tell us what the mission is of Log Off.
Yes, so Log Off is a global youth movement that's dedicated to promoting the healthy and conscious use of technology. And so within this movement, we're pursuing our mission in three ways. So the first way is promoting the balanced use of technology. The second is supporting more authentic human connection, which is both with and without tech. And the third is advocating for humanized tech through policy that aligns with our core human values.
And how are youth participating in the Log Off movement? Like, how are they benefiting from it?
Great question. So teens in this movement are benefiting in a lot of ways. And I would say the most important way is that they're gaining awareness. So teens are becoming more aware of their tech habits and of how social media is affecting them negatively. And so because a lot of teens are feeling disconnected, anxious, stressed, they're actually beginning to ask themselves, why should I decrease my screen time? What is my intention? Where is my energy going to go off screen? And so with this awareness, teens are actually normalizing both the joys as well as the challenges of technology. And so on the one hand, really realizing that social media provides, as we know, ways to connect with individuals and groups who otherwise couldn't, but also on the other hand, acknowledging that on social media, we're constantly comparing our lives with the superficial, idealized images of other lives.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And some other benefits that they're getting.
Yeah, so another great benefit is that teens are really discovering their agency. And so, because awareness leads to agency, teens really have this power to choose when to log on and when to log off. And so, this means that teens are not only learning how to step away from their device, but also how to use technology with more intention and awareness. And so, by engaging with this movement, teens are given a voice and a platform to share their experiences with social media and ways to combat the harmful compulsion loops that really keep us craving the hit of dopamine we get on social media. And then the last really important way teens are benefiting is they're just enjoying feeling more emotionally healthy and connected. And so through Log Off, teens get to practice digital well-being. And so we have a well-being initiative, for example, that offers a lot of opportunities to increase well-being offline in many ways. And then we have a digital detox challenge where teens actually commit to reducing their screen time daily by 50%. And in all, they just report feeling more free, connected, and balanced.
Nice. I could probably benefit from the detox program myself, but anyway. Now, you all have created space for youth leadership with Log Off, and I think this is so cool. This is an international movement, and you created space for that. Tell us about how you've done that.
Yes, so the Log Off, as I said, is a global youth movement. And so we have a global team of members from 17 different countries. And so we're between 14 and 18 years old. Most of us are in high school. And we've built and are enabling a leadership structure that includes, directors who lead different initiatives within the movement, a press release team, ambassadors or team members who are helping expand and engage with the initiatives, a team council with all the directors who come together and meet monthly to check in on each initiative and discuss the next action steps. And so a few examples of initiatives that I'm just really passionate about within the movement are, as I said, the Wellbeing Initiative, which is led by Keegan from North Carolina, and it really promotes meaningful human connection with others, your true self, and nature. We also have the Female Empowerment Initiative, which is led by Fabiana from Peru, which focuses on the way social media affects the lives of girls and young women. We have the Character Ed curriculum, which is led by Sanvi from India. And so this is an interactive curriculum that we have launched to teach younger generations about how to navigate social media well. We have the LGBTQ plus initiative, which is led by Emmy from California, and it focuses on uplifting and supporting LGBTQ plus youth. And it provides a lot of resources and guest speakers and fun events. And then finally, I love that the podcast, which is led by Iona from Ireland and Bhavya from India. And this is all about spreading awareness of how social media affects the lives of teens. And so we've recorded a lot of podcast episodes like Exploring Academics and Behavior Design with Stephen Crane, who is a Stanford researcher, a sit down with the screen time consultant, Emily Churkin, and Exploring Digital Balance and Well-Being with Rajul Arora, who is a TEDx speaker.
Nice. And some of you might want to actually listen to the podcast. So Celine's providing a link to the podcast that we're going to include in your resource guide. So you can check it out and hear from all of these wonderful, talented teen leaders across the world. Can you share an example of how you've seen a youth come to the realization that social media might be doing a little bit more harm than good?
Yes, great question. So I want to share actually a powerful story from Sanvi, who's from India. I spoke about her, and so she's the director of the character education curriculum, and so she her awareness actually really shaped her leadership. And so Sanvi actually found herself not gravitating toward popular social media apps, right? TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. And a few weeks ago, she said to me, when everyone in my class went on Instagram, I didn't. And so when the hot conversation topics shifted towards who had more followers, who had more likes, I had nothing to say about it. And she'd always wondered, why did the people she'd known for years now suddenly find this video of a cat or a dog more interesting than, the sports game that they were watching? And so Sanvi really didn't find herself drawn to social media, but she found herself, so profoundly affected by the impact it had on all the people around her. And so she is now reflecting on her time as the director of education in Log Off. And so she said that the character ed gave her this opportunity to educate other children and teens on their smartphones. And this is not telling them not to use it, but telling them how to use social media more wisely. And so with a team of more than 15 passionate teenagers from around the world, Sanvi really hopes that the character ed finds its way into schools and homes alike and helps people become aware of using technology more responsibly, and that this character ed has an impact on children and adults around the world.
Very nice. Awesome. Yeah, it's, this movement, the Log Off movement, is a wonderful example of how youth are actually engaging with other youth in meaningful ways. So please share with us, like, what have you learned about what it takes for youth leaders to engage with other youth?
Great question. And I think one of the biggest reason that youth leaders are able to engage with others is just because we share a fundamental desire for connection. It really is that simple. And connecting with peers goes stronger in teens. And so, as a lot of us know, that the need to be social is hardwired in our brains. And so we all long for authentic connection with others, but don't always know how to get it. And so for teens, if we have people listening who are parents, that looking for community through social media for teens reduces FOMO, the big dark fear of missing out. But it's really tricky to not get attached to the high of fake, superficial online connection. And then another reason teens can just relate to each other is because most of us have had similar experiences with social media. And so we can relate to having, gotten lost in a rabbit hole of excessive social media use or hyperconnectivity. And so what helps us connect in places like Log Off is this shared honesty and vulnerability around the challenge of managing social media in our lives. And a lot of our teen council meetings, I hear a lot of teens saying, it's a relief not to have to pretend my life is perfect, or I'm so glad other teens have also had a hard time disconnecting from their devices as well. And then the final challenge and reason we're able to connect is, I think as teens, we really share a desire to make a positive difference in the world. And so our generation is keenly aware of the huge problems facing us, climate change, racial and gender inequalities, economic injustice. And so I deeply believe that all of us teens want to contribute to solutions and want to feel like we can have a positive impact around us. Sadly, a lot of teens don't know how to yet, or haven't been given the tools, the confidence, the voice, or the permission to see themselves as agents of change. But that is what, becoming involved in an organization like Log Off can help teens with. And so I really, really think that young people have just so much energy, passion, and creativity. We just need to help them channel all of this for good.
Yeah, let's just harness all that good energy. And you're talking about all these global challenges, like climate change, inequalities, inequities, like racial inequities, health inequities. And, Kevin is an example of how, that is so meaningful to him that he started that organization. So you're absolutely right. So with that, I'm going to ask you a question very similar that I asked Kevin. And what can adult professionals do to cultivate youth leadership?
Yeah, cultivating youth leadership I believe is so important. And so a few ways you can do this. I would say first, double check, your personal or institutional mindsets and know that we really value your guidance and support as an ally or mentor, just not as a person who wants to monitor or control us. And so tips for being a great adult ally, I would say believe that we're part of the solution and not just passive beneficiaries or problems to solve. Also seek to understand and learn from us. And so it's really important for adults to take time, right, to give youth meaningful feedback and build that self-confidence that they might not have. And I think it can be difficult for adults to find time to meet with youth individually, but this is really important. This relationship, this one-on-one relationship is crucial. And so plan to meet regularly with core leaders or just with students and be on the lookout for just impromptu meetings. And I would say also is just remember that for me, at least I've seen this with my experience in leadership, the best learning is learning by doing. And so a lot of the time, our educational systems are really designed to teach us something for later application in life. So learning by doing is just a really important key.
And what about how organizations can support youth leadership?
Yeah, so finding ways to support youth leadership in your organization or community, I would say a lot of ways that have helped me at least, create team councils or advisory groups to really incorporate the youth voice. These groups can give input on strategy, on program design, on problem impact, for example. Then I would say enable youth-led initiatives or projects. When I was in sophomore, I attended a program and they really gave me the voice to start my own initiative and the confidence. And so I think these youth-led initiatives or projects really need to be real efforts that youth care about, and that we can have a positive impact that matters. And for example, we can help design and organize a summit or youth conference. And then finally, like what Cheryl and Kevin are doing, tell and amplify stories about youth leadership and youth change making, and youth will then feel like they can really make a difference in the world.
Wow, such powerful words from both you, Celine, and Kevin. And I want to thank Cheryl for kind of like setting the stage and giving us an example of how an organization can pour into youth, and just hearing these wonderful examples from you, Celine, and Kevin about how you're using your leadership and how you are actually making a difference in your community. So I just want to thank all of our guests today. And I am curious if your understanding of how to empower youth leadership may have changed. So I'm going to ask James to share a poll right now. He's going to launch that. And please respond to this poll. Your response is anonymous. Your response is anonymous to all, including us. But we're just curious about if your understanding has significantly, moderately improved, a little improved, or not improved at all. And so thank you for responding to that. Tommy, where do we hear some folks coming from that are new to the CHR&R family? And James, you can close that poll if you'd like. I know I see some folks from South Carolina, and that's where I'm from. So welcome, South Carolinians. And hopefully there are some folks on the webinar from Florida as well, which is where I currently live. Joanne, what questions do we have in the Q&A box?
I'm so glad we have time for questions, Erica, because we have obviously the presenters got folks thinking, which is a good thing. We adults need to think and be more thoughtful about engaging youth. But I'm going to start with a question for Celine, and this is from Maribel. And Celine, you laid out all the wonderful initiatives that Log Off is engaged in, and youth are actually leading. And Maribel wanted to know, what would you recommend as the best social media platforms to reach and communicate with high school students?
That's a great question. I would say Instagram works best for my generation. Sometimes that can be hard for adults to understand all the tools, but Instagram is the most used. Facebook sadly is not used a lot, or sadly, thankfully is not used a lot for my generation. But I would say between 10 and 18-year-olds, Instagram is mostly used.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much for that information. Erica, if I can do another question?
Yes.
And this one's for Cheryl. So Cheryl, Daryl said, your work is amazing. Thank you to you and AYLF. And can you point us to where we might be able to find some evidence-based practices that are utilized by AYLF?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple I'll share. One is the power of storytelling. As you can see, we have really been sort of moved by both the stories of Kevin and Celine. We use that throughout the cohort experience for them to be able to tell their stories, to learn the stories of others. We also use something that's a cornerstone to the Aspen experience called text-based dialogue. That's where we read selective texts such as Letters from Birmingham Jail by Dr. King, I Will Not Die an Unlived Life by Donna Markova. We have them read the Commonwealth Address from Cesar Chavez, Machiavelli's The Prince, some work from Bettina Love, Bell Hooks, Kentucky is my fate. And so we ask them to dig into the text, think about what the text means. What is it saying? Number one. Two, how does it connect to their lived experience? And then three, what are the lessons they pull from the text? We're not looking for them to solve or to close out the conversation or to have the best answers. We're just looking for them to engage with one another, use discourse to sort of expand their worldview, and then move that forward and connect it back to humanity and values and things of that nature. And then finally, the last practice we make sure we use, both Celine and Kevin have talked about this extensively, is the power of community. So we help them form community with their small regional cohorts, and then nationally, and then with everyone that has gone through AYLF, as well as people who have connected that may be content experts and partners and people in networks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Now I know, Erica, I think we have to move on with the webinar. So I just want to encourage, I did see some folks chat in some questions, and I encourage those folks to join us for the post-webinar discussion group, because Cheryl, Kevin, and Celine will be joining us, and you can get your questions addressed there and just hear more from them. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I am so looking forward to this discussion group. And Kevin, I saw you chatted in that your favorite part of AYLF was this opportunity for you to really think about what the text is saying to you and to dig into that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion group. It's going to be fun. I am actually going to ask Tommy to share a link to a survey. We are always curious to hear your thoughts about the webinars that we do. We have an interest in hearing about what you thought about today's webinar. And if you would, click on the link that he's sharing with you, but fill out the survey later. And just know that we do take your feedback seriously. We use your feedback to improve our webinars. We use your feedback to determine what our topics will be. So we do monitor the feedback closely. And so I just want to thank you in advance for taking time to fill out that survey. Now, you probably have realized just how critical access to broadband is to our daily lives, especially in this past year with the pandemic, with so many of us connecting online. So given our digital world, broadband has the power to shape opportunities in our life. So I'm inviting you to join us for our last webinar of the 2021 year as we explore broadband, a super determinant of health. We're going to be joined by Christine Maganda. You probably remember her from our September webinar when we had like the dialogue on poverty. Christine is our data and analytics team leader, and she will be sharing ways that you can find out what the broadband data looks like, what that connectivity looks like for your county. We're also going to be joined by Kieran Tower Baines from the San Antonio. And San Antonio happens to be a 2018 RWJF Culture of Health Prize winning community. So San Antonio has implemented some exemplary solutions to bridge the digital divide. And believe me, I'll be picking her brain about what are some of those innovative solutions are, so that way we can share them with you on next month's webinar. So go ahead and be sure to register for that. It's already up. All right. So you heard Celine say that a lot of younger people are not on Facebook anymore, but CHR&R still is. So I am going to invite you to follow us on Facebook, and we're definitely on Twitter. But if you want to be a member of the CHR&R family, which I hope you do, the best way to do that is to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. So this is the best way to find out about our upcoming webinars and our latest tools and resources. So please do that. And now I have an important announcement to make, which is CHR&R is now on LinkedIn. So also be sure, if you have a LinkedIn account, to follow us and get even more ways to learn how to be connected with us. And so, for the moment that you all been waiting for, we are going to ask you to join us in the discussion group as we wrap up today's webinar. Again, these conversations give you the opportunity to connect with others on the webinar, find out what they're doing in their communities to advance youth leadership. You will also be joined by Cheryl, Kevin, and Celine. And so Tommy's chatting out a link to that discussion group right now, and Joanne is going to head out and open up the room so we can all join her in a few minutes. So all you need to do is fill out a couple of questions on the registration page and you'll be admitted. So thank you to Cheryl, Kevin, and Celine for just sharing your wisdom with us today. You are so amazing. And I'm just, I know that folks here on the webinar are joining me in wishing Kevin and Celine well in their future endeavors. And I also want to thank all of you who are connected with us on the webinar. Thank you for what you do. I know that advancing equity is not an easy thing, but thank you for all that you do to create a better world for us. And I look forward to seeing you in the discussion group and on next month's webinar. So thank you.